because today we're going to dive deep into Daniel, a guy who walked among ancient empires and had some really, really crazy visions.
Yeah, Daniel's a fascinating figure because he wasn't a prophet in the traditional sense, like an Isaiah or Jeremiah. He was actually a young man from Judah's royal family. And he was taken captive to Babylon in 605 BC.
So we're talking about like the time of the Babylonian exile. That was a pretty big deal, right? Like a turning point in biblical history.
Oh, absolutely. Huge turning point. And, even as a captive Daniel, he rose through the ranks of the Babylonian court. I mean, he served multiple kings, even continued on into the Persian reign.
Wow. So his wisdom and leadership must have been off the charts for them to recognize that, even though he was, a captive from another nation.
Exactly. I mean, even his captors recognize that. And this really sets the stage for the book that bears his name. And it's actually viewed differently by Christians and Jewish tradition.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Christians tend to see it as prophecy, but Jewish tradition actually places it in the writings.
That's a big difference. I'm guessing that's at least in part due to like the content of the book itself.
Absolutely. It's full of symbolic visions and dreams that seem to foretell future events. I mean, including the rise and fall of empires and even hints at a coming messianic figure.
Okay, so let's jump into those visions. One that's always kind of blown my mind is Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the giant statue made of all these different metals.
Oh, that's a great one to start with. So this dream, it's recorded in Daniel chapter 2, and it's just a powerful illustration of God's sovereignty over human history. Remember, the statue starts with a head of gold. That represents Nebuchadnezzar himself and the Babylonian Empire at its height.
So Nebuchadnezzar's seeing himself at the top of the heap,
Yeah.
like the greatest ruler of them all.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there. Below the gold head, you have a chest and arms made of silver.
Yeah.
And that represents the Medo-Persian Empire, which would eventually conquer Babylon.
Oh, I see. So each metal stands for like the next empire in line. What comes after the silver?
Well, the belly and thighs of the statue are made of bronze, and that represents the Greek Empire.
Oh, right.
And think about the characteristics of bronze, right? It's strong, but it's also flexible.
Right.
It kind of perfectly captures the swiftness and adaptability of Alexander the Great's conquests.
Oh, that's a great point. I never thought about it that way. So what about the iron legs? They always seem to me to represent like strength and stability.
You're exactly right. The iron legs symbolize the Roman Empire, and we all know they were known for their military might and their vast infrastructure. But here's the twist. The feet of the statue are made of iron mixed with clay.
So even the mighty Roman Empire had a weakness.
Precisely. That mix of iron and clay, that represents the eventual fragmentation and instability that led to the decline of the Roman Empire. It's just a brilliant depiction of how even the most powerful empires are, in the end, just temporary.
So it's not just about predicting who conquers who. It's about like revealing this deeper truth about the nature of power and God's control over human history.
Exactly. And that's something we should all remember, especially when we look at what's happening in our world today.
It makes you wonder, though, if God's the one in control of all these empires, what about that mysterious stone that shows up and just smashes the statue to pieces? Where does that fit into all of this?
Ah, yes, the stone. That's where we begin to see hints of a different kind of kingdom, one that won't be destroyed by human ambition or conflict.
Okay, I am definitely intrigued. Before we get to that, though, let's switch gears to another powerful story in Daniel, the fiery furnace. It's all about faith and courage, like when the heat is really on.
Oh, absolutely. This story, it's in Daniel chapter 3, and it spotlights the faithfulness of Daniel's 3 companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You might know them better by their Babylonian names.
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, the names their captors gave them, right?
Right.
Probably to try to make them fit in with Babylonian culture. So what was it that got them into so much trouble?
Well, Nebuchadnezzar, he had erected this massive golden statue, and he commanded everyone to bow down and worship it.
Oh, wow.
This was a direct challenge to their faith. They were devoted to the one true God.
So they refused to bow, knowing what could happen to them. That must have taken some serious guts.
They did refuse. And their response is just this powerful example of standing up for your beliefs, even when it means facing persecution. They told Nebuchadnezzar, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king.
Wow, what a powerful statement of faith. But I'm guessing that didn't go over so well with Nebuchadnezzar.
No, not at all. He was furious. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and he had them thrown in.
Yikes. Talk about a trial by fire. Sounds like something straight out of a movie. But we know they make it out right.
They do, and it's nothing short of miraculous. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar himself, he's astonished, and he says, "Look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God."
Whoa, that's an incredible detail. Even Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king, he's forced to acknowledge the power of the true God. What a testament to the power of faith to protect.
It really is, and it raises an important question for us, doesn't it? What would we do in that situation?
Yeah.
Would we have the courage to stand up for our beliefs, even when we're facing danger?
That's a question worth asking ourselves for sure.
Hmm.
It's a powerful reminder that faith isn't just about believing. It's about living out those beliefs, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And that's a theme that runs through the whole book of Daniel. Now, are you ready to dig into some of Daniel's own visions?
Absolutely. I'm especially curious about those strange beasts that come out of the sea. Those always seemed a little creepy to me.
Oh, they are. Daniel's visions, they're recorded in chapters 7 and 8, and they depict these series of bizarre, terrifying creatures, and they symbolize the rise and fall of empires, much like that statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. But they also take us a step further.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Tell me about that first beast. What was that all about?
Well, the first beast, he's described as a lion with eagle's wings.
Okay.
And he represents the Babylonian Empire, just like that golden head of the statue. The imagery highlights Babylon's like swift and fierce rise to power.
So it's kind of continuing that theme of empires rising and falling, right? What about the second beast? What's he like?
The second beast, he's a bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth.
Okay.
And he represents the Medo-Persian Empire. And that uneven posture of the bear,
Yeah.
it likely symbolizes that uneven distribution of power between the Medes and the Persians.
So it's like a visual way of showing their combined strength, but also their internal kind of power dynamics. Fascinating. Okay, what about that third beast?
All right, the third beast is described as a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads.
What?
This one represents the Greek Empire, which, as you know, was known for its rapid conquests under Alexander the Great. The 4 wings and heads, they probably symbolize the division of the empire after Alexander died.
So each beast reflects not just like the raw power of the empire, but also its specific characteristics. That's really cool. Okay, what about the fourth beast? This is the one that always freaked me out.
Yeah, it's a disturbing image, that's for sure. This 4th beast, it's unlike any known creature. It's got iron teeth, 10 horns, and this little horn that speaks arrogantly and persecutes God's people.
Yeah, that little horn always gave me the chills.
Yeah.
It feels like we're moving past just the rise and fall of empires and into something a lot more, I don't know, sinister.
You're right. That 4th beast and the little horn, they bring in this new element, a malevolent power that opposes God and actually seeks to persecute those who follow him.
So who or what is this little horn? Is it like a specific historical figure? Or is it more like a symbol for, I don't know, for like a recurring type of evil?
That is a question that has been debated for centuries.
Some see it as a specific historical figure, like Antiochus V, Epiphanes, who persecuted the Jews in the 2nd century BC. Others see it as like a prototype for a future figure, the Antichrist, who shows up at the end of time.
Right. And it really is fascinating how this connects to something else we see in Daniel.
What's that?
This Prince of Persia mentioned in chapter 10.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird one. Who was this guy? Was he like an actual king or something a little more, otherworldly?
It's one of those passages that really makes you think. Remember, Daniel was praying for understanding about the future of Jerusalem, and this heavenly being appears to him.
Right.
But get this being was delayed in delivering the message because of this Prince of Persia.
Hold on. So we're not talking about like a human prince here. It sounds like we're getting into like spiritual warfare territory.
Yeah, a lot of scholars think that this Prince of Persia wasn't a human ruler, but a powerful angelic being, maybe even a fallen angel who is associated with the Persian Empire.
Wow.
It suggests that there's this whole spiritual dimension to these earthly conflicts, like a battle going on behind the scenes that we can't even see.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It adds this whole other layer of like complexity to these power struggles. So if there are these angelic beings, on the side of darkness, Does that mean that God also has his own angelic forces at work?
Oh, absolutely. The text actually mentions the archangel Michael coming to help the messenger who was sent to Daniel.
Mhm.
And it says that Michael is a prince, too, a protector of Israel.
So it's like a cosmic chess match or something.
Yeah.
With all these powerful forces kind of moving around and clashing in the spiritual realm. But what does all this mean for us? Like, why should we care about this ancient spiritual warfare?
Because it reminds us that there's more to this world than we can see. You know, the decisions we make, the battles we face, they can have repercussions in this unseen realm. It's a call to take seriously the spiritual dimension of our lives and choices.
It's like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
That our actions, they have a ripple effect.
Mm.
Even in a realm that we can't fully perceive. It's both humbling and kind of empowering. So let's talk about the message that Daniel finally received. Chapter 11 lays out this incredibly detailed, complex vision of conflicts, especially between the king of the north and the king of the south. It almost feels like you're reading a historical newsreel, but with this prophetic edge to it.
It's an incredible chapter, full of intrigue and political maneuvering. And remember, Daniel's getting this information centuries before these events would actually happen.
That's wild. So who were these kings of the north and south? Were they actual rulers?
Most scholars agree that the king of the north refers to the Seleucid dynasty. They ruled over the region north of Israel after Alexander the Great's empire was split up. And the king of the south refers to the Ptolemaic dynasty, which controlled Egypt to the south of Israel.
So we're talking about a power struggle between these two dynasties. But why is it so important for Daniel and for us to understand this specific conflict?
Because it directly impacted the land and people of Israel. Remember, God had promised that land to the descendants of Abraham, and these geopolitical battles had a huge impact on God's plan for his chosen people. The fate of Jerusalem is often caught in the middle of these power struggles.
It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and you know that Jerusalem is right there on the tracks. Can you give us some examples of these north versus south clashes that happened, just like Daniel predicted?
Oh, absolutely. One striking example is the reign of Antiochus V Epiphanes, a Seleucid king who ruled in the 2nd century BC. He's mentioned by name in Daniel 11. He's described as a king who will exalt himself and magnify himself above every god.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
What did this Antiochus guy do that was so bad?
Antiochus V, he actually tried to force Hellenistic culture and pagan worship on the Jewish people.
Oh, wow.
He outlawed their religious practices. He desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. He even sacrificed a pig on the altar.
No way.
I mean, just a horrific act of blasphemy in the eyes of the Jews.
The guy sounds like a real tyrant. It's mind-blowing to think that Daniel saw this coming centuries before it happened.
And it's interesting because Antiochus's persecution sparked a rebellion led by the Maccabees. And that rebellion ultimately led to the rededication of the temple.
Oh, yeah.
An event we still celebrate today as Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights.
That's right. A story of hope and resistance against oppression. But it's also a reminder that God's people are going to face persecution and hardship throughout history. What strikes me is that Antiochus isn't just some random bad guy. It's like he fits a pattern, almost like a foreshadowing of something bigger.
You've hit on a crucial point. This king of the north figure, with his blasphemous actions and persecution of the Jews, he becomes like a prototype for a much more sinister figure who will appear on the world stage at the end of time, the Antichrist.
So the events in Daniel's time, this clash of kings, it's like a preview of the final conflict that's still to come, like a sneak peek at the ultimate showdown between good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
That brings us back to those end-time themes we were talking about earlier. Before we jump into the details of that final showdown, can we talk more about this abomination that causes desolation that's mentioned in Daniel? That phrase has always stuck with me.
Oh, yeah, that phrase, which is also echoed in the Gospels, it refers to this act of profound sacrilege that will happen in the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. And it's likely connected to the Antichrist setting herself up as an object of worship, demanding allegiance from everyone.
So it's not just about a physical destruction of the temple. It's like a spiritual defilement, a twisting of what's holy.
Exactly. It's a direct attack on God and his people. And this event will signal the beginning of the most intense period of the Great Tribulation.
It's hard to imagine such a time of darkness and deception. But in the middle of all this turmoil, Daniel also talks about those who will understand, the wise who will shine like the brightness of the heavens. Who are these people?
Yeah, those verses, they offer a glimmer of hope in the midst of all that darkness. They're pointing to those who will stay faithful to God during the Antichrist reign, those who refuse to bow to him and who will continue to shine the light of truth.
So even in the darkest hour, there'll be a remnant who hold on to their faith and bravely resist evil. Makes you wonder how we can cultivate that kind of unwavering faith in our own lives, even when we're facing, smaller challenges.
That is a powerful question, and maybe that's one of the main lessons we can take away from Daniel's life and visions, a call to be prepared, to cultivate this deep-rooted faith that can withstand the storms of life, both the big ones and the small ones.
Yeah, I love that. It's like a reminder that faithfulness isn't just about like surviving some far-off future event. It's about how we live every single day, how we respond to the pressures and temptations that are all around us right now.
Exactly. And it's about holding on to hope, knowing that even in the darkest times, God is still in control, and his victory is certain.
Okay, I'm even more curious to hear what Daniel says about that victory, about how this cosmic drama, how it all plays out. But I think we'll save that for the final part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot, but I have a feeling that the most mind-blowing stuff is still to come.
Oh, you're right about that. There's so much more to unpack in Daniel's final vision.
Okay, so we're back, and we're ready to tackle the final chapter of our deep dive into Daniel. Last time we were talking about the abomination that causes desolation, and those who stay faithful during the time of the Antichrist. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but I'm really eager to hear what Daniel reveals about, the end of this whole cosmic drama.
Well, Daniel's final vision, which is recorded in chapter 12, gives us a glimpse into the future, a time beyond the reign of all those kings we talked about. He describes this time of tribulation like unlike anything the world has ever seen.
So this is that great tribulation that Jesus talked about.
Exactly. And it lines up with what we find in the book of Revelation, this
Yeah.
idea of a period of intense suffering and persecution right before Christ returns.
Daniel also mentions this really specific time frame. A time, times, and half a time. Sounds kind of mysterious. What does that actually mean?
That's one of the most debated phrases in all of biblical prophecy. Some people think it refers to literal years, while others see it as like a symbolic period.
Yeah.
But the general idea is that it points to a 3.5-year period of intense tribulation when the Antichrist will rule with this unprecedented power and really ramp up the persecution.
So it's like a countdown to that final showdown, and the stakes just keep getting higher and the pressure keeps building.
You could say that. It's a time when people will have to pick a side, either align themselves with the Antichrist or stay faithful to God.
And that brings us back to those who understand, right?
Mhm.
And shine like the brightness of the heavens, the ones who resist the Antichrist. What happens to them during this time of intense tribulation?
Well, Daniel's vision suggests that, they'll face persecution and hardship, but they also have a key role to play, leading others to the truth and standing up to the forces of darkness, even if it costs them everything.
It's pretty inspiring, to think about their courage and resilience, even when they're up against such incredible odds.
Yeah.
But I got to ask, how does this all end? What does Daniel tell us about the outcome of this whole cosmic battle?
Daniel's final vision ends with this decisive moment, God's intervention. He describes the Ancient of Days, a figure that represents God sitting on his throne of judgment.
Yeah, I love that imagery. We see something similar in Revelation, right? With the throne of God and the final judgment. It's a powerful image of like ultimate authority and justice.
Absolutely. And then Daniel sees one like a son of man approaching the Ancient of Days and being given dominion, glory, and a kingdom that will never be destroyed.
This sounds a lot like the return of Christ that we read about in the New Testament. It's like all the pieces of Daniel's visions are coming together to create this grand picture of God's plan for history.
Exactly. And the message is crystal clear. Even though there will be a time of great tribulation, God wins in the end. His kingdom will prevail.
It's this message of hope that just cuts through all the darkness. And it reminds us that no matter what we're going through, no matter how tough things get, God is still in control. He's working out his purposes, and ultimately, his kingdom will come. What a powerful thought to hold on to, especially as we try to make sense of this crazy world we live in.
Daniel's message is a call to be faithful, to stand strong in what we believe, even when we're facing pressure or persecution. It's a reminder that our choices matter, and that even when things are at their darkest, we can choose to be that light of truth and hope.
So, if Daniel's visions do point to the future, how should we understand what they mean for us today? How do we live faithfully in a world where, this battle between good and evil is still raging all around us?
Those are great questions. And honestly, those are questions that each of us needs to wrestle with as we think about the book of Daniel. It challenges us to look at our own lives, to figure out where we stand in this cosmic struggle, and then to choose to align ourselves with God's purposes.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. We've gone from ancient Babylon all the way to the end times, from political intrigue to spiritual warfare, from terrifying beasts to a glorious kingdom. It's amazing how relevant Daniel's visions are for us today. They give us insight into the patterns of history, the nature of power, and ultimately the triumph of good over evil.
I agree. And maybe most importantly, they remind us that God is sovereign. Even when things feel chaotic and uncertain, He's working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, and ultimately bringing about His perfect plan. That's a message of hope that we can all carry with us as we navigate our own lives and the challenges that come our way.
Yeah, it's a reminder that faith isn't just about believing in something. It's about living it out. It's about aligning our lives with God's purposes and trusting Him, even when we don't have all the answers. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
You're very welcome. I hope it encourages you to keep digging into the book of Daniel and discover even more for yourself. There's always something new to learn.